Welcome back to another story time. Today's topic is going to be another sensitive one, I think. It's about conceiving, motherhood, just that expectation of women. I know there are cultural differences, even though I'm a Tamil, born in Sri Lanka. Growing up in, in the UK meant that maybe some of the expectations that my parents would have had of me might differ from somebody who grew up back home. So I get that. I have viewers from all over the world watching my stuff, and sometimes they can relate, sometimes they can't. Saying that, I still had that pressure, from my parents of like, why aren't you giving me grandchildren? And anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but let's just say, just for those who didn't know, if you haven't read my blogs, I've mentioned it several times anyway, that I'm not able to conceive. I'm not going to go into detail of why that happened. I wasn't born with that condition. Something really bad happened to me at some point in my life that I ended up in hospital, and they had told me then that a lot of stuff was damaged down there, and it just basically, there's a chance of me not being able to conceive later on. And I didn't take it seriously then. It wasn't even a priority then. I was going through depression. I was going through this. I was, police, name it. It was just so much happening in my life at the time that, a doctor saying to me, oh, you might not be able to have children in the future, was literally the least of my concerns. So I didn't think about it then. And obviously as I got older, when I was planning on getting married, I was having serious relationships and stuff, it was in the back of my mind. And it was something that I was just like, I should go get myself checked. And so I did. I got myself checked in my late 20s, I think it was. And I was told that the chances of me getting pregnant is going to be really, really low, because there are so many terms for it. I could sit here and just give you like a biological explanation, but I'm not a doctor. I know I studied biology and psychology donkey years ago, but it's basically my uterus wall, so the place where the baby grows or the fetus grows, it's severely sort of like rough and I guess damaged. I don't know. I don't really like using that word, but yeah. So the chances of something hatching or latching on and it growing is very, very small for me. I know that there are women who have similar conditions, and a lot of these women end up also going through miscarriages. It is not something I have experienced. It wouldn't even go and sit on my uterus wall, basically. So that's why I can't conceive. And just when and honestly, you could I don't even know. I had it all planned in my head of how I'm going to say this and what I'm going to say, but it's so hard because you're constantly thinking of so many people watching, so many people probably having an opinion, and it's always so hard. You want to be absolutely honest and say what you're thinking, but then I want to be as empathetic as possible, because I know that some women who would be watching this maybe are desperately trying to have a baby, and so there are things that I hope I'm not going to say to offend or upset anybody. I mean, that's not the plan, and this is in no way to say, hey, motherhood sucks, or to say, oh my god, like, it's the best thing in the world, or anything like that. No, I'm going to be completely neutral here. I'm just going to share my experiences, what I went through, and what my thinking is now, in the hope that that might inspire somebody who is going through a really hard time about this, to kind of maybe have a slightly different outlook to life, because that's what I mean. Being a Tamil, being from my community, usually the generation that I'm from as well, like I was born in the 80s, so women, my mum got, like my mum and my aunts, they all got married quite young, and I was expected to get married as soon as I came out of university. It wasn't even a thing that I should get a job. It was literally just like, oh, you should get married, you're 21, you should get married. And my parents did at the time introduce me to people because they were really hoping that this is what I should be doing. They never forced me. My parents had a love marriage themselves, but they just thought they'll introduce me because they felt pressured by society to marry me off. I didn't marry until I was 29. That was my first marriage. If you've seen my divorce video, you would know a little bit more about that. And then, by the way, I'm doing a really simple base. I am going to go a bit heavier with some lashes on the eyes, but I'm just going to do, like, I've just applied some powder and some concealer. I'm going to go over with powder again, just to dilute the brightness a little bit. Yeah, so then naturally, when they expect you to get married at that age, they kind of want you to have babies straight away, because they're just like, wait, especially if you've been married for 2 years and you haven't gotten pregnant then. People literally think something's wrong, or something's wrong in your marriage, you know, and this is the kind of generation I came from. I know things are different now, or things might not be different for some people, or for some of you watching might be like, what the hell, I've never heard of this before, but this is what I came from. In my family, it was kind of expected that you get married and you have children straight away, and that was what was expected, and that was what the norm was, basically. So obviously I was already that rebel because I didn't get married at such a young age. Me getting married at 29, again, if you've watched my video, I was pressured into it because I didn't want to get married then. I didn't find the right person, but I had the pressure, being the oldest granddaughter, to set an example for my younger cousins, and they were like, you have to get married, you can't just stay unmarried. So I did. I got married. Obviously it didn't work out, and then they kind of left me alone. And then 2 years later I met my husband, my now husband, my forever husband, and you know, it was just like, we got married, everything was fine, but then, as predicted, within a year, it was all the, why aren't you having children? Oh my god, you're like in your 30s, you should have children. So my mum knew. I had told her in my early 20s that I don't think I could get pregnant. Obviously I didn't know it for a fact then. I didn't see enough doctors then. Again, I was focused more on my depression, getting better, therapy. Those were things that were more a priority at the time. My mental health than my physical health, which, you know, I could have looked after both, but I wasn't capable of doing it. So when, obviously my mum kind of knew, but she always thought, oh yeah, we can go see doctors, don't worry, I'll take you to India, or I'll take you here, I'll spend whatever savings I have to help you. And that was always my mum's, and I know she obviously meant well, but she thought this is a fixable situation. And then I think after the divorce and, you know, meeting my current husband, it is something that I of course mentioned to my husband right at the beginning. I said to him, listen, there's a chance that, you know, we might not have biological children. Are you okay with that? It is something that I literally said, I think, in one of my first conversations with him, because I think it's a big, big, big thing. And it is something that you should discuss with your partner for sure. Right at the beginning of dating, I think you should tell him what your situation is, or what if you don't want children? What if you are able to conceive but you just don't want children? Again, I think it's such an important discussion to have, you know, with your future partner. So I remember at the time, you know, I said that to my husband, and I said, hey, I want to adopt. It is a discussion that I had with him, and at the time he was like, yeah, sure, if things really don't work out for us, yeah, let's do it. And, you know, so if you've seen any of my older, you know, YouTube videos of Q&As and stuff, I have always said, I just want to adopt, I want to adopt, I want to adopt. And it was something that, you know, I was really serious about. And so once we were obviously living in Malaysia, we started looking into it. We spoke to a few places in India and in Sri Lanka. And very quickly realized it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. It was very complicated. It was, you know, obviously involved a lot of lawyers, and then lockdown happened, and then finances, and it was just one of those things where we were like, okay, let's just wait because we don't know what we're doing. Are we still going to stay in Malaysia? Like, you know, so then we obviously decided to move back to London. And then the focus was obviously getting the house ready. My husband's focus was his career in the UK as well. He's a lot younger than me. So he kind of felt like he wanted, you know, to focus on his career, which, you know, I completely understood and respected. And then when the time was right again, we had this conversation again. We sat down and we were like, okay, we have adoption as an option and we have surrogacy as an option. And I sat down my parents and I explained it to them. One thing I'm forever grateful for is in the 7 years of being married, my mother-in-law, okay, has never, ever, ever asked me for grandchildren. She's never come to me and said, like, what's going on? She's never had that topic with me. I know she's had the discussion with my husband, rightfully so. You know, it takes two to tango. And I'm so grateful that she did that and she didn't come and point at me. Even though it is me that can't conceive, I loved that she never, ever put me under pressure or made me feel any different. And so then when I had that conversation again with my mum, openly, and I said to her, like, you need to stop asking for grandchildren. Like, you know, you need to stop this. Because it actually hurts me. Like, it bothers me. It hurts me. It makes me not want to go to family events. It makes me want to completely cut out everyone in my life out of fear, because I automatically have this assumption that if I go to an event, you know, people are going to be like, oh, how come you don't have any kids? Like, why? Oh, you don't? Okay, you should go see this doctor in India that I know. I'm sorry, I'm saying India because India has some fantastic doctors, okay? And I know a lot of people who go to India to get this done. I mean, there are amazing gynaes and doctors everywhere. Please don't get offended by what I'm saying, but it's such a typical thing that I would hear from family. That's why I'm saying it. Where they're just like, oh, we know somebody we trust and we know and you should go there, and, you know. So I think once I sat my mum down and I said, listen, this is really hurtful. Like, you know, and instead of, usually I would be so aggressive and I would say to my mum, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to give you kids. I don't want to have kids. No, 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 no. And I'd get so defensive. But then one day I just sat her down and I actually explained it to her. And I said to her, like, you need to stop saying this to me. And it would always be that casual conversation. I'm like, oh, like, it would literally be like, almost like a comment, like, oh yeah, how are you? The sun is shining. Oh, okay. So when are you getting pregnant? You know, it would be like that. And then it would immediately trigger me and I would literally be like, okay, what did you just say? And then I would get so angry and I would get so like triggered and I would get into this argument with her. And my mum, honestly, bless her soul, she is so like, she's the most toughest skinned human being I know. And I love that about her, and I know I've learned that of her, and I'm glad that I've got that attribute or characteristic that I've learned from her, is that my mum was kind of just like, oh yeah, would put the phone down and call me the next day again to talk about, I don't know, mutton rolls or something, as if the conversation we just had and argued about was like, oh, she's so over it, whereas I wouldn't be. And I would carry that resentment and this anger towards my mum. And that every time we would talk, I'd just snap at her and she would never understand why I would be snappy. And I wouldn't understand why I was snappy because I didn't realize that I was holding this anger of like, it's almost like protectiveness, right? Like you're already on defense mode before you even see. And this is what used to happen to me when I used to go to family events. I would go in there with a negative mind and this defense attitude where I'm just like, I'm ready. You ask me something about pregnancy, watch what I'm going to say to you, kind of thing. And which wasn't healthy. It wasn't healthy for me because I would be sitting there suffering, having anxiety, worrying about this event. Do you think these people care? No. They're just going to see me and it's going to be such a normal comment for them saying, oh, how come you guys don't have kids yet? Oh, okay, and then walk off. Whereas I'm going to be like, it's going to ruin days, weeks, hours. I'm going to lose sleep over it. I'm going to like eat loads of crap to make myself feel better. All that, I was just like, no, I'm doing this to myself. I need to do something about this. I need to do something about this mental state. So the first step was to talk to my parents. And I said to my mum, openly. I was just like, you need to stop with these comments because I can't conceive. And then she asked me naturally, why do you think you can't conceive? Then I explained it to her and I knew what she was going to say. The next thing she was just like, okay, let's go speak to several doctors. And I'm like, I've spoken to doctors in the UK, in Malaysia while I lived there, even in India. I'm like, I've spoken to people, I've gotten myself checked, I've had several scans at several times in my 20s and in my 30s. I go for regular smear tests. I check my cervix. I check everything properly. You know, we have cancer that runs in our family from my mum's side, so I check myself regularly. So it was one of those things where I had to sit my mum down and explain to her why and what. And then once she understood, she was like, what about surrogacy? And I was quite surprised that my mum knew about surrogacy. But then when she asked, I was just like, yeah, that's possible. The doctors have said to me that that's possible because my eggs are healthy. And then me and my husband sat down and then we did the research about surrogacy. And we sat there and talked about it. And honestly, I think anything you do with your body should be your personal decision. And when I looked into it, it wasn't something I wanted to do anymore. I really didn't. And you know, and I'm not going to sit here and try and say why, because I don't want to put people off of wanting to do surrogacy, or the other way around. Or what if there are women who've done surrogacy and they're so happy about it? So I'm not going to sit here and try and talk about whether adoption is bad or surrogacy is bad or having children is bad or not having children is bad. No, I'm not here to say that, because who the hell am I to judge? Or I'm not a professional, and I'm not, just for me, from experience of like the depression and everything, there were so many things the moment I understood that there's going to be a lot of hormone imbalances, you know, we're going to be injecting ourselves with this, with that, da, da, da. There's so many things that when I researched it, it didn't work for me. I didn't want to do it anymore. So I said to my husband, look, I've always wanted to adopt. You know, I would love to go to northern Sri Lanka, and I would love to go to an orphanage there, and I would love to have a kid from there. You know, if he's okay with it, obviously. But then my husband wasn't. He wasn't okay with adoption. He really wanted biological children. And I think, again, that's a personal thing. And I really don't want to have... I hope you guys are not going to discuss this in my comments or tell us what's better and what's not better and what we should do. No, that's not why I'm here for. This was a discussion between my husband. I didn't want surrogacy. I wanted adoption. My husband didn't want adoption. He wanted surrogacy. So we sat down and we both just sat there and we talked about our plans, our future, the age gap, career, and when we would be doing this, because whatever I'm deciding, we should have done this years ago, because the process alone takes years. So I'm just like, you know, what do we do? Like, you know, so we had several very serious conversations, and we both decided that, you know what, we really like our lives, I guess. We like the way things are. We like how we are with each other. We, you know, we really have a happy marriage, and I never thought marriages can be like this, and that's the kind of marriage I have. And I feel like, you know what, after everything, I feel like I deserve a good marriage, and I have it. And so honestly speaking, we don't feel like there's anything missing. You know, we don't feel that way. Maybe because we don't know what it would have felt like, so we can't compare. But you know, for us, we are really happy, and we're really happy with the decision. And I am aware that it is something that my mum or some of my friends, well, most of my friends have kids now, or are planning, you know, are trying for kids and stuff like that. And you know, I've had this conversation with several people, especially my mum, who's like, what are you going to do when you're in your 60s? And I'm like, what do you mean? And then she was like, you're going to be so lonely. Who's going to take care of you? And I looked at my mum and I'm like, I'm not going to have children because I want my children to take care of me. That's not why I would want to have children, because I'm thinking of my old days. I want to have children because I really want to have children, and because I've dreamt of having children, and I'm so excited to have children, and I really want them. I would want to have children because of that, not because I'm trying to, you know, have a retirement plan or don't want to go to a care home. And again, but that's obviously my thinking. Different people have different reasons, and different people have different reasons of, you know, whatever. But I think it's, again, it's that it's a culture thing as well. And I think, again, my mum was just like, but what are you gonna do when you're 60? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm hoping that I'm still gonna be working, and then I'm gonna retire, and then, I don't know, live in a hot climate somewhere, do gardening, read books, I don't know. And I think my mum didn't understand that concept. For her, it was just like, but it's just gonna be you and your husband, and what if one of you passes away? And I'm like, but that's life, right? Like, and anyway, so now it is a conversation we don't have in the household anymore. Or even if I go to like family events or anything like that, nobody talks about it. I think people also know how old I'm getting, and people know that we've been married for so long. They've given up on that question of like, oh, why don't you have kids? You know, and I say this, okay, I say this, but I made this mistake recently. I had met some friends in the industry. We all went out for dinner. I was like this, literally like this nosy auntie. I was like, oh, like, when are you planning on having children? And you know what? Obviously she was offended. She was upset that I asked that question, and I was so apologetic after. I messaged her after. I mean, I apologized there and then, but then I thought about it and I messaged her and I'm like, I am so sorry. I can't believe I asked you such a personal question. And I really hated myself for being that person who I used to hate. You know, these women who would be like, oh, why don't you have kids? Why aren't you having kids? And then I did it, but I did it because we were talking about, I mean, there's no excuse either way, but we were talking about children. One of them had a child, and then they were all talking about like how this one would sometimes look after that kid, and da-da-da-da, and we were having this conversation, and I was just like, oh, okay, like, when are you guys planning on having kids? And it was such an innocent kind of thought that I had while we were talking, and very quickly realized, like, I think it was 4 of us, and all 3 women looked at me like this, like, how could you ask this question? And for a second I was a bit confused. I was like, why? What did I say? And then I was just like, oh my God. And you know what? That was such a learning lesson for me. First of all, that yeah, you should never ask personal questions like that. But at the same time, it was a learning lesson because it made me then think of the people who ask me, not because they're vicious or they're mean or they just want to be nosy or whatever, but some women or some of my aunts in the past have, including my mom, have asked me because they think that that's a happy or nice question. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's that perception. Like, they don't mean it in a bad or evil way. It's a question. But then because I would get so defensive and so angry about it, I associated that question with all sorts of negativity. And then I go and do it myself to a person who's not even like a best friend of mine or a cousin. Even then I shouldn't do that, but I'm just saying, it was like, I thought about it after and I was just like, oh my God, how dare I ask that question? And then, you know, she was so sweet about it after, but I'm just saying, it made me then think of these women. So now when I go to events, even though nobody asks me, if 1 or 2 ask me just in a very innocent way, they'll literally be like, oh, like, you know, you guys don't have any kids? And then I would, in a very normal manner, just be like, no, we don't. And, you know, it's just the 2 of us and we're really happy. And that's it. And, you know, the question or the conversation moves on to something else. And that's it. And I feel good about it. And I don't feel upset or angry or whatever and stuff. However, in my early 20s though, it was tough. It was really, really tough when I was going through all the things that I was going through, and then kind of like mid-20s towards the later 20s when I knew for a fact after all these, you know, checkups and stuff that I definitely couldn't, because I did tell my ex-husband as well that I couldn't have biological children. He at the time didn't want any children anyway. He just didn't, and that was something he told me on our first date as well. He was like, by the way, I don't want any children. And I was just like, oh, okay, perfect, because I can't give you any. We laughed about it then, but you know, it's obviously not a laughing topic. It's not a, it's just for us it worked at the time, because I was really nervous about telling him that I can't have biological children. And obviously it wasn't a love marriage. This was like from a matrimonial side that we had met, like me and my ex-husband. So I thought, I'm sure one of the main things he's gonna want is me giving him children, kind of thing. So obviously when he turned around and said, by the way, I don't want any children, I was like, oh, like, you know, so that's, I'm sorry, that's why I was laughing. But anyway, yeah, so going back to the past, when I did first know about it, it was when I started to kind of really process it and realize that I can't. Honestly, I can't explain it, and maybe some of you might be able to relate to this feeling, but I couldn't look at other children. I couldn't look at a child in a pram, in, you know, like if anybody on the tube or on the train or anywhere, if anyone was there with their kids, I couldn't look at that child, and I couldn't look at that relationship or that you know, that vision. It bothered me a lot. It would make me really sad to the core, because I would look at it and I would be like, I'm never gonna have that. And that was a really hard thing for me to go through, and it was something that I never really spoke about for the longest time until I did have therapy and I was able to really deal with it. But a few of my friends started having children quite young. Some of my best friends, really, so their kids are like, what, nearly 10 years old even, some even 12, 13. So you can imagine, in my 20s, I was around my friends' kids, and I couldn't have that relationship with them because I didn't know how to. And so, like, I didn't go and play with those kids. I wasn't like thinking of their kids. I wasn't going to their birthdays. I wasn't, you know, it wasn't something that I wanted to. It didn't cross my mind because I didn't want to be around children, right? And so then they kind of gotten used to not involving me in anything as well. So they wouldn't really invite me to their kids' birthdays, or they wouldn't really share anything about their kids, like if their kids did something amazing or whatever, except for one friend who, she's one of my closest friends. So she's got twins, and she basically just started sharing pictures with me, or sharing like videos of, like, you know, the first time they did this or the first time they did that, from when they were really young. Like, I've known her since the babies were babies, like newborn babies. So she would always share stuff, and at the beginning I didn't have anything to say. Like, I would just be like, oh, okay, cute, ah, like, that's it. I didn't know what to make of this, and I was just like, okay. And then it became a habit, and it became a thing where if she didn't send me something, so me and this friend, like, we message almost every single day, literally. So she will send me pictures of her kids, and, you know, now the kids are old enough, so I'm able to have conversations with them, and they'll leave voice notes through their mum's phone, and they'll, like, because they'll see something on Instagram, you know, their mum will show them something like of a reel that I did, and then they will leave me voice notes saying, oh my god, Vithya auntie, like, that was so cool, I liked your outfit or something. And, you know, it would make my day. And on many occasions, especially every single year on Mother's Day, she will send me the biggest message saying how I'm such an amazing mother, you know, to her kids and things like that. And I would get so emotional, and sometimes I've left her voice notes crying my eyes out saying, I'm so grateful that you include me, that you've made me be a part of your children's life. Even though I didn't do that, subconsciously, I always stayed away from anybody's kids, because I'm just like, you know, I don't know if it's the feeling of like not being worthy, or, you know, or because I thought, oh, that's going to trigger me, or I don't know what it was. I really can't psychoanalyze myself right now, so I have no idea. I just know with her, she didn't even give me a choice. She would just send me and bombard me with pictures, every single thing, even if they win the smallest award, or I don't know, it could be them getting ready for like an event, and or like a birthday party, and they just look cute, and she'll just send me pictures. Like, my phone, I probably have like literally just this year alone, from January to now, I probably have like 900 pictures or videos or something. And And I always say that to her. I'm just like, thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for including me, and thank you for making me feel important, and for making me, I know it sounds bad by saying the word making me, but I love those kids, you know, and I love those kids genuinely, like genuinely with the soul, where I'm just like, when I think of them, I smile, and when I think of them, like, everything radiates, and I just think, oh my God, like, what an amazing friend for not ever taking offense, not ever being upset. I wish women could have more conversations like this, where they can be so honest to each other about the way they feel. And I hate this whole culture now where they're just like, oh, I cut her out for my mental health, and, you know, please, I used to be the same, and I used to be like that, and I used to think it did help my mental health, but sometimes it's just like, no, sometimes you have to just be honest and talk about it. Don't just avoid situations, just like kind of be open about it. And I think whether you are trying to have a child, whether you are a mother, or you're somebody who's very happy and content and doesn't want to have children, it should be okay. Either of these women should be accepted in society and accepted as like, you guys are women and you're worthy and there is nothing wrong with you and those are your choices. But I hate when there's judgmental people. I hate when there are these comments, and I hate when somebody makes you feel like you're not a woman because you can't or choose not to have children. And then you have women who have loads of children, but what if they never wanted to be children, or what if they have a lot of problems or baggage and they're letting it out on their kids, and they're treating their kids badly, and they're beating them up, and they're abusing them and stuff. You know, there are people like that out there as well. So it's almost just like, it doesn't mean that everyone is meant for motherhood, right? Always. It doesn't mean that. And I think more and more of us need to understand that. Every time I share a blog or a post, which I've stopped doing now, by the way, on Mother's Day, I don't post pictures of me and my godchild anymore. I have a godchild who's, gosh, she's going to be 17 years old this year. It's crazy, who I'm really close to. But I don't post anything about that anymore because I'm just like, I don't want people to constantly think that I'm playing victim or I'm pitying myself or whatever. No, I don't need to. And because the response that I get is people message me privately saying, oh, don't worry, Vithya, I believe in miracles. I know you'll have a child soon. Don't worry about it. I'm going to pray for you. I know people mean really, really well, but they have no idea how that can be triggering as well. Not just for me, it could be for anyone. If somebody is content and has gone through years of accepting that this is their situation and they're so content and so happy and they're enjoying life, and then this other person comes in your life, whether it's a stranger or a close friend or a family, and says, I'm praying for you, I'm praying for a miracle for you. It's almost just like, dude, what are you trying to say, you know? So I think as women, whether, you know, we agree or not and stuff, I think we should be more empathetic towards women. And honestly, miscarriages is something that, again, so many women don't talk about, but so many women go through. And I think that needs to be a topic of conversation as well, because that's a really tough one. If you think you're pregnant and you announce it or you don't announce it, and then, you know, you lose that child, it's horrible. It's a horrible feeling. So on Mother's Day, it's like, yeah, everyone's just like, oh, celebrating their mums, but then it's also like all the women who have had loss and grief and so many other really negative feelings that are associated with that day as well. And I feel like with this video, I hope it was in order. Like, I hope I said things in whatever order, and please, you know, I'm sorry if I've said anything to offend anyone or upset anyone, or maybe I didn't come across as empathetic or whatever, but I kind of wanted you to maybe pick on little things like the kind of conversations me and my mum would have. I'm sure a lot of women can relate, and maybe some of you might feel like you need to have an honest and open conversation with your partner or with your parents or with, you know, your loved ones, so that nobody triggers you or nobody upsets you. I think that's why. Not because you should keep a secret and you shouldn't talk about what's going on with your body. You don't have to, of course, but if you want people to be empathetic towards you, or for people to understand why you're behaving or feeling a certain way, I think it's important that we open up about how we feel and what's going on with us, right? To our nearest and dearest, I mean. And at the same time, also, you know, if you are a mother and you're watching it, great that, you know, you probably feel great and fulfilled, maybe not, but maybe the people around you, you know, something you can think about. Just because you chose to have children, or you have children, or you're happy or you're not, doesn't mean other women need to be judged, or other women need to be like, oh wait, you know. And I think it's so easy to do that as well, all those comments. And you will be surprised, I do have some friends who don't have kids, who are not even married, and they say the same thing to me. They hate when somebody says to them, well, you're not a mother, so you don't understand. It's actually such a hurtful thing to say. So maybe that's something to think about as well, that, you know, whenever you say, oh, but I've got kids and I had to bring them to school and I had to cook, of course we get that, we understand that. But if you then turn around, oh, you wouldn't understand because you're not a mother, it's unfair. That's like literally a smack in our faces, right? So that's another thing to think about. And then to those women who choose not to have children, it should be okay. And if they choose not to have children, they should be able to say that out loud and confidently without anyone judging them. Like, you know, without somebody looking at them saying, but what are you going to do when you're 60 or 70? You're going to be on your own. like my mom asked me. So I think, you know, I'm hoping that with this video, it might get us to think a little bit differently about these kind of things. And I'm used to it now with the kind of comments I get about this, but I'm just trying to tell you guys maybe to have a different approach, because I sometimes need to learn myself. I gave you an example of me even asking that question to somebody, and but yeah, I'm content and I'm in a good place, and I really hope whoever's watching is as well with whatever you've decided, or might feel some kind of positivity after watching it. I need to add my lashes and put lipstick on, but I've talked way too much, so